Three spine-chilling true tales of sinister events where police were powerless to help. Sarah always believed that nothing could touch the quiet charm of Maplewood, the little Midwestern suburb where she had built her life. But that sense of security was shattered the night she returned after another grueling shift to find her home unsettlingly altered. Family portraits were shifted, casting eerie shadows of distortion across familiar smiles. Toys lay scattered across the floor, each missing piece a silent cry for help. Her heart raced as she took a deep breath, convincing herself it was simply fatigue. Yet, the disarray clawed at her, whispering that something wicked crept into her safe haven. As days bled into sleepless nights, Sarah's dread escalated. Notes began appearing anonymous, haunting accounts of her daily routine. "You always take the same path home from work. Is it safe, really?" Panic tightened around her throat, each line chipping away at her sanity. And just when she sought refuge in the local police precinct, their indifference left her feeling small and vulnerable. "Just keep your doors locked, ma'am," the officer said, as if that simple advice could cloak her in safety. Feeling more alone than ever, she turned to her neighbors, casually voicing her fears. Their reassurances felt too practiced, their smiles too wide. In their eyes, she sensed something unspoken, a collective knowledge about her creeping dread. Why did their conversations stutter into silence when she approached? Why did they exchange furtive glances when she walked away? Something deeply unsettling tangled in her gut like a vine. One night, she watched her children, Lily and Max, playing in the backyard, a paradise of laughter. But that joy soured as Sarah overheard them preoccupied with an invisible friend. The giggles transformed into low chants as they huddled near the trees, turning her once peaceful backyard into a realm of shadows and whispers. She felt a primal instinct tugging at her. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something leered just beyond her vision. It was too much to ignore. On the night when fear gripped her heart most tightly, she grabbed a flashlight, heart pounding like thunder, and followed her children into the dark woods. The cold air nipped at her as she pushed forward, each step a labor of dread. Tension electrified the atmosphere. Shadows danced along the trees, and the air thickened with an unsettling silence. She pressed on, determined to uncover the truth about the flickering lights beckoning her deeper into the grove. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The flickering intensified, and she stumbled upon twisted branches forming a sinister archway. The woods fell silent, the world outside receding as her heart thudded against her ribcage. She closed in, driven by love yet gripped by terror. Fragments of a local legend throbbed in her mind of restless spirits who wove their tales into the fabric of unsuspecting lives. The legend echoed warnings she had dismissed as mere folklore, now intertwining with her reality, taunting her with impending dread. Suddenly, the giggles returned, slippery and airy, like smoke. "Don't leave us, Mommy. We're just playing." The chilling whisper cut through her, sending ice coursing through her veins, as she felt herself teetering on the edge of oblivion, caught in a darkness deeper than she could ever imagine, a darkness her seemingly friendly neighbors had long known about. In that moment of desperation, dread washed over her, reminding her that survival may be the greatest illusion she ever believed. With the echo of her children's unsettling words wrapping tighter around her, Sarah hesitated at the archway formed by the gnarled branches. The flickering lights ahead seemed to beckon her forward, but part of her screamed to flee. She felt the air shift, thickening with something she couldn't name. A part of the night slipped away, becoming unrecognizable, as if she had gone beyond her world and into another, a darker one. Her flashlight flickered, illuminating snatches of the path ahead. Each step felt more daunting, a weight pushing her down. Branches cracked underfoot, and suddenly a hushed whisper floated past her ear. She spun around, But there was nothing, only the heavy silence of the woods enveloping her. Sarah. The voice called her name this time, slipping through the trees like a slithering phantom. It was deep, velvet, smothering her in an eerie warmth that twisted her stomach. She felt rooted to the spot, anticipation coiling around her limbs. "Lily! Max!" she shouted, panic slicing through her bravado. Her heart pounded erratically, each beat a reminder that she had stepped too far into unknown territory. As if in response, the twinkling lights pulsed brighter, casting warped shapes against the trees. Then, she saw them, her children, standing some distance away, eyes wide and unblinking, locked in a trance. They weren't alone. A figure materialized beside them, shrouded in shadows. It had a human form, but the features were obscured, as if the darkness itself wrapped tightly around it. "Mommy, look, our friend," Lily shouted, her voice unnaturally cheerful, as if she had been given a magical gift. Every instinct Sarah had screamed for her to turn and run. The urge to scoop her children up and flee was overwhelming. But she fought against it, clenching her teeth as she took a step forward, desperate to shield them from whatever had claimed their innocence. The figure stirred, lifting an arm, revealing a grotesque elongation of its hand that seemed to beckon her closer. "Join us," it whispered, a sickly sweet drawl that made her skin crawl. "No," she shouted, her voice echoing in the oppressive stillness. But the children simply giggled, unaware of the danger they danced with. A shiver crept down Sarah's spine, paralyzing her with fear. Why wouldn't they look at her? Why were they staring so blankly? She felt like a ghost, invisible and unheard, drowning in her helplessness. With a final surge of determination, she broke through the air that felt heavy against her. "Lily! Max! We need to go home!" she cried, her voice breaking. Suddenly, the lights flickered wildly, and the figure lunged, becoming a whirling mass of shadow, a nightmare made up of every dark thought she had ever buried. Sarah's heart raced, its frantic rhythm urging her to act. Bracing herself, she charged forward, terrified of what might happen next, terrified of the entity that had captured her children's laughter. But knowing she would fight to the bitter end as she reached for them, the ground beneath her feet rumbled violently, the air brightened for a split second, and all sounds ceased. Then, chaos erupted. What was happening? And then, everything went black. The only thing Sarah could think was that she needed to wake up. Time had stopped, and the shadows seemed to hover, waiting. What had she stepped into? In darkness, a whisper echoed, "Stay with us forever." This is just the beginning. What had she unleashed? What awaited her on the other side? Darkness enveloped Sarah, thick and suffocating. She blinked, but her eyelids felt heavy, as if each flicker could pull her deeper into the abyss. The whisper faded, leaving behind only the weight of silence. Her heart thudded in her chest like a warning drum, urging her to escape. But escape to where? She had no bearings. The world she knew had disintegrated. Suddenly, a faint light pierced the veil of black, revealing twisted branches overhead, tangled and clawing at a starless sky. She staggered to her feet, desperation clawing at her throat as she spun around, searching for her children. "Lily! Max!" she called, her voice hoarse, swallowed by the oppressive night. The sound echoed back, a cruel reminder of her isolation. The flickering lights from before flickered back to life, hovering just ahead. They called her like a siren, promising safety. Sarah stumbled forward, each step trembling with fear. She needed to find them. What kind of monster could snatch her children away so easily? As she moved, shadows danced and twisted at the edges of her vision. A paralyzing dread crept up her spine, urging her to look back. But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. "Mommy!" A small voice pierced the air, desperate and forlorn. Her heart surged at the sound, propelling her deeper into the darkness. "Mommy! Help us! Max!" She ran toward the lights, the thrum of panic rolling like thunder in her ears. But the voice wasn't coming from the lights. It came from deeper in the woods, drawing her away from her goal. Suddenly the shadows shifted, closing in. They pulsed with malevolence, whispering her name. Sarah, the sound wrapped itself around her, squeezing tighter. She fell to her knees, shaking her head in defiance. There was no time for this. Get away from me, she screamed, fighting against the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. In that moment, a flash of clarity surged through her. She must believe in her strength. She must find her children. Summoning her courage, she pushed herself up and ran toward the voice, toward the deeper throat of the woods that beckoned with promises of dread. As she plunged into the thick underbrush, the air grew colder. Each breath felt like ice. She found a clearing, the moonlight dripping through tree branches like spilled milk, casting ghostly shadows on the ground. There, in the center, stood a figure cloaked and grotesque. The air turned electric. She stumbled back, recognizing the outline. You! She spat in defiance, refusing to be intimidated. But the figure turned, revealing a face both familiar and alien. A fusion of her children's features twisted into an impossibly wide grin. We're just playing, Mommy. Come play with us. Every instinct screamed at her. This wasn't her children. It couldn't be. Behind that grin lay something insidious, waiting to ensnare her. Get away from them, she shouted, her voice breaking just as the flash of hope in her heart began to dim. The figure laughed, a sound that sent ice shards through her veins. They don't want you, Sarah. They've chosen to stay with us. No. She felt the ground tremble beneath her, the echoes of their laughter slicing through the air. The trees leaned closer, as if eavesdropping on this unholy reunion. In a rush of resolve, she lunged forward, desperate to break the connection between them. As her fingers grasped air where the children should have been, everything erupted into chaos again. The world spun, colors imploded, and voices melded into an unrecognizable cacophony of sorrow and delight. And then silence. The cold seeped into her bones as she stood in the void. Was she alone? A whisper coiled around her, soothing yet ominous. Stay with us forever. In the dark corners of her mind, she knew this wasn't the end. This was just the path to something more horrific. What would happen next? What twisted recognition awaited her in this monstrous game? Desperation clawed at her insides. Would she find her babies again or lose herself completely? The silence wrapped around Sarah like a suffocating shroud, a heavy blanket of dread clinging to her skin. Her heart raced, echoing in her ears as she strained to perceive something, anything, in the pitch-black void. The whisper curled around her again, taunting, "Stay with us forever." The words slithered deeper into her mind, igniting the fear that had lain dormant. Where were her children? Their absence felt like an open wound. Each passing moment heightened her sense of loss, the fangs of despair sinking ever deeper. She blinked against the darkness, trying to force clarity, but only shadows responded, a swirling mass of terror. Then, in the paralyzing gloom, a flicker of light ignited at the periphery of her vision. She spun toward it, hope mingling with caution. Was it another illusion, or a real path back to sanity? The light grew, spreading warmth like a distant, long-forgotten sun. Driven by the desperate need to find her children, she moved toward it. As she approached, the light revealed skeletal trees, their branches twisting like bony fingers reaching for her. The wind whipped through them, creating whispers that sounded almost human. "Come join us," they beckoned, each gust carrying the scent of decay mixed with sweet promises. "No," Sarah gasped, her throat tightening. Panic surged within her, battling the magnetic pull of the light. She pushed against the encroaching shadows, shifting her weight as she stumbled forward, but the darkness clung, pulling her back. The whispers intensified, each one a new layer of horror wrapping around her sanity. "Mommy!" The voice rang out again, so close, so real. It shattered the cocoon of fear momentarily, igniting a flicker of hope. It was Max. If she could just reach him, just clear this veil of nightmares. The dim light began to distort, flickering as if the world itself were unraveling. She pressed on, her feet pounding against the cold earth, desperation guiding her. Her hands brushed against thick, gnarled roots, yet she maintained her grip on the fleeting light, willing it to guide her. Then the ground split open beneath her, a crack slicing through the earth as she barely managed to leap backward. A thick mist erupted from the chasm, swirling in vicious eddies, filling her lungs with the stink of rot. She stumbled, reeling, and felt something brush against her ankle, a cold, clammy sensation. Fear shot through her like a jolt of electricity. She glanced down, but the mist twisted into shadow before she could understand it. The voice again, softer now, teasing. "We're waiting, just come play with us." "No." The scream erupted from her throat, raw and defiant. She turned sharply, scanning her surroundings, fighting to break the clutches of the darkness. It was all a trick, a lie. The trees pulsed around her, and the shadows thickened. She clutched her head as the whispers darted between realities, seeking a way into her thoughts. They pressed firmly, desperate to fill the emptiness left by her children. "Mommy, help us," echoed once more, weaving through the fog and grounding her for a heartbeat. A surge of determination struck. She had to fight, to resist. She screamed her children's names, her voice a beacon piercing the dark. But only echoes betrayed her shadows, mocking her cries, reminding her of her own isolation. Then, in an instant, the air thickened, the light brightening unnaturally. A door appeared before her, its edges shimmering with a ghastly glow. Her heart raced again, pounding furiously. Was it a way out or another trap? Sarah, a hauntingly familiar voice, whispered from behind the door. It was more than a voice. It was a memory, a reflection of her deepest hopes and fears. Without thinking, her weary legs moved, compelled toward it. But as she stretched her hand forward, the whispers escalated into a roar, the shadows tightening like a noose. What lay beyond that door? Could it lead her to her children or to her doom? In the relentless grip of anxiety, she pushed forward, unaware of the darkness swirling ever closer, eager to swallow her whole. With a final effort, she threw herself towards the door, praying it would lead her home. Would she emerge victoriously or become one more lost soul in the abyss? The door swung wide, revealing a blinding light that engulfed Sarah. She blinked, momentarily blinded by its brilliance. With instinct overpowering fear, she stepped through, her heart hammering wildly. The world around her shifted, colors brightening and darkness retreating. But a heavy air still clung to her skin, whispering warnings she couldn't comprehend. The sounds of her surroundings morphed into something foreign. The air crackled with a sinister vibrance, each breath tasting metallic. She found herself in a broad meadow, an expanse of dead grass swaying under a ghastly sky that flickered between hues of gray and a sickly pale green. The bare branches of trees dotted the landscape like skeletal hands reaching upward, begging for salvation. "Max!" she cried out, panic surging anew. There was no response, only echoes of her desperation ricocheting off the shadows lurking just beyond her vision. Her heart clenched as she scanned the eerie meadow, clenching her fists as dread swept over her again, a sense of impending doom hazing her thoughts as she moved forward. The whispers returned, biting at her resolve. "Join us, Sarah, it's so much better here," they twisted in the wind, wrapping around her, tugging at her sanity. In a world where hope flickered like a dying ember, was there even a chance of rescue? "Shut up! Leave me alone!" she screamed, her voice brittle against the growing clamor. Yet the shadows coiled tighter, writhed closer, and in a haze of fear, she spotted movement. Tiny figures in the distance, pale and ethereal. "Mommy!" Max's voice. Her heart skipped a beat, and she was off again, her frantic footsteps echoing against the silence. Each step brought with it an intoxicating rush, but dread churned in her gut as the figures grew clearer. They appeared to be children, their skin ashen, eyes wide and vacant, staring directly at her. "Help us," another voice echoed, this one unfamiliar, but it chilled her spine. The closer she got, the more distorted the scene became. The children's faces were hollowed, drawn tight, mimicking the ghastly joylessness of the meadow that swirled around them. She stumbled, confusion colliding with terror as she shouted, "Where are my children?" But the figures merely swayed, their mouths forming silent words. Terror gripped her throat, squeezing until the air became too thick to breathe. The whispers crescendoed once more, drowning out her thoughts. "We all belong here, Sarah. Forever." The taunting chorus wrapped around her, tendrils of shadow reaching, grasping. She clenched her fists, fighting the grip of despair threatening to drag her down. No, no more. In a surge of fury, she charged at them, desperate to break through the twisted reality enclosing her. But as she reached for the closest child, her hand passed right through, like vapor dissolving into the wind. The realization slammed into her. The children weren't just lost. They were gone, trapped, perhaps, in this dreadful place. Anguish twisted in her chest. What if Max was already part of this nightmare? In a gut-wrenching moment of clarity, she understood. Maybe the shadows were not just trying to lure her. They craved her despair, her fear, her very essence. Gathering her strength, she turned to flee, her eyes wide, scanning desperately for any sign of escape. But the ground shook beneath her, and the whispers morphed into furious roars. "Stay with us." It was a plea, a demand, a terrible promise. She ran, her breaths quickening, the world blurring past. Branches clawed at her, the laughter echoing behind her, relentless. What if she couldn't escape? What if the shadows caught her? Would she too become a lost whisper? She pressed on, weaving through the tangled branches, heart pounding, fear bubbling to the surface. There had to be a way out up ahead. A glimmer caught her eye, a flicker of light in the heavy fog. Was it hope, or another trick? Without pausing to think, she lunged toward it, her body heavy with panic and the weight of uncertainty looming over her. But as she neared the light, another chilling realization washed over her. She didn't know what awaited her on the other side. Would she find safety, or descend deeper into horror? The light grew brighter, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm that seemed to synchronize with her frantic heartbeat. Sarah propelled herself forward, each step heavy with doubt. Was this shimmering orb of hope just another cruel illusion crafted by the shadows that hunted her? As she neared the glow, the chill of despair tightened around her like a noose. The whispers reached a deafening crescendo, swirling around her, mocking her every thought. "You can't escape us," they shrieked, a cacophony of lost souls. "We take what we need." With one last surge of courage, Sarah broke through the fog. Suddenly, she stumbled into an open space. The grass here crisp and vibrant, bathed in the strange light, felt too good to be true. She gasped, her breath clouding the air in front of her, seeing a path illuminated by the glow beneath her feet. "Max!" she shouted again, desperation rising like bile in her throat. A faint rustle caught her attention. At the far end of the clearing, a figure crouched. Her heart soared for the briefest moment until dread clenched her stomach. It wasn't just the shape of a child, it was obscured, shadowy and indistinct. Mommy, the voice was soft, fragile, but unmistakably her son's. She surged forward, her heart racing, but as she approached, the figure faded, leaving only darkness where once it had stood. "Max!" Panic clawed at her throat as she felt the ground tremble again. The shapes of trees around her seemed to shift, leaning inwards as if burdened by a weight only they could feel. The whispering shadows grew restless, their voices simmering with malice. "Leave. We're better without you," they hissed, the atmosphere thickening. Sarah could feel their presence pressing in, suffocating a feeling that felt all too familiar. A shudder ran through her body as shadows coiled around her feet, pulling her back. She fought against the grip, her breath coming in harsh gasps. "No, you won't take me," she screamed, pulling each heavy foot forward, fighting against the darkness. But the shadows weren't finished. Just as she broke free, a multitude of figures echoed around her, the children from before, faces twisted and forlorn. "Join us, Sarah," they chorused, eyes wide with a haunting emptiness. Each hollow whisper pulled at her very core, tempting her with the idea of surrender. She didn't want to end up like them, but the idea of giving in, of losing herself to this awful place, began to seem alluring. The weight of her despair threatened to drag her down. "Think of Max. You must find him," A desperate voice inside her screamed. It was the only lifeline she had left. Forcing herself to focus, she ignored the way her body trembled, the way panic gripped her heart. The light beneath her feet seemed to pulse stronger, a flicker of sanctuary in the abyss. "Where are you?" she whispered, gazing into the unhallowed night, her voice breaking. An almost urgent silence fell upon the meadow as if the shadows were waiting, poised to transfer all her burdens to their malevolent embrace. "Max!" she called again, bracing herself against the tide of darkness surrounding her. With rage burning in her chest, she turned on her heels and charged across the meadow, eyes fixed on an approaching glow far in the distance. But as the shadows screamed and chased her, they bore down with a power that twisted her mind. Every corner felt familiar now, the meadow an endless trap. Would she find her son, or would she become a whisper, lost in the wailing void? Just as hope began to flicker out, she felt something brush against her leg, a familiar small hand. She whipped around and was met by the ghostly image of Max, tears streaming down his ashen cheeks. "Mommy, help me," he whispered, and the horror crystallized. Unmistakable. In that moment, she realized the truth: he wasn't really there. It was an illusion, and the shadows were closing in. "Max!" she screamed, but would she react fast enough to free her son from the grasp of the shadows, or was she already too late? The darkness pulsed around her, and a terrible tension filled the air as Sarah lunged toward the flickering light where the real path might lie. But looming behind her was the darker truth, ready to claim its next victim. The shadows lunged toward Sarah, their excitement palpable, a swirling mass threatening to envelop her. They whispered her name, a chorus of derision and despair, and each shifting shadow curled like smoke, seeking her skin, hungry for her warmth. She stumbled, breath hitching in her throat as she pushed forward, fighting against both the clinging darkness and the weight of despair that pressed down like a suffocating blanket. The light ahead flickered like hope itself, and it felt like a desperate grasp at life. She sprinted toward it, each step a reminder of what she could lose. "Mommy!" The echo of her son's voice sounded once more, weaving through the shadows, a thin thread pulling her back. It held both promise and warning. "Help me, no. You're not real," she screamed, terror reverberating through her. The wailing shadows coalesced and thrashed around her feet, but her heart burned with the memory of Max, of his laughter and his small hand enveloped in hers. A flicker of determination ignited in her. She couldn't turn back. The glow ahead shimmered like a mirage, battling against the dripping darkness that clawed at her from all sides. Every inch forward felt like moving against a tide, despair seeping into her veins. The darkness, with its soft promises, whispered of rest, of relief. "Join us," the words dripped like poison, laced with sickly sweet seduction. "You won't have to fight anymore, get away from me," she cried, anger igniting her limbs. She lunged for the light, bending her will against the tide of shadows, grasping at the hope swirling ahead of her like distant echoes calling her name. Just as she reached the light, she felt a force slam against her back, sending her sprawling to the ground. The air exploded with whispers, their hunger overwhelming. "You belong with us." The sensation of icy fingers traced her spine, pulling her deeper into the abyss. Sarah turned her head, her chest heaving. She glimpsed them, faces emerging from the shadows, children with mournful eyes and twisted grins, mouths moving, mouthing her name, repeating the haunting invitation. "Join us, Sarah. Join us." Her will faltered for a moment, the pang of despair almost irresistible. Would becoming one with them be easier than this relentless fight? But then she remembered Max, the weight of the world crashing over her as she fought to breathe. He needed her. "No!" she shouted, forcing herself off the ground. Each movement felt like running through molasses, but she couldn't give in now. Adrenaline surged, propelling her forward again. She used all her strength, launching herself toward the lightest warmth, but the shadows clawed at her heels, a darkness that felt all too close. As she stumbled onto the path outlined by the glow, she noticed a flicker of movement nearby. It was another child, standing just out of reach, face obscured. Fear twisted her stomach tight. "Max?" she whispered, voice trembling. But the figure melted away, replaced by the harsh laughter of the shadows. You can't escape. You cannot save him. Panic seized her. She continued running. Each corner of the meadow morphed into a grotesque reflection of fear. But there was no time to doubt. She had to keep moving, keep searching. What was real? What was illusion? Her mind spiraled into chaos. Then, she spotted a tree with twisted branches that seemed to beckon her. The deep shadows around it felt alive, shiftier than the others. In the very heart of the tree's dark embrace lay another glow, dimmer but steady. A flicker of hope tempted her again. "Max, I'm coming," she yelled, racing toward the tree, desperation sparking within her. But as she moved closer, the shadows closed in, a roaring sea of darkness, desperate to drag her under. What awaited her in the light? Could it truly guide her back? And what about the trees that seemed to whisper her fate? Fingers coiled around her once more, this time unmistakably warm, as she was dragged down. Was it Max, or the shadows that had claimed her? The air thickened, and she felt herself sinking into an endless void, heart pounding louder than ever. But then, just before she was swallowed, she heard a voice, "Look for me, Mommy." In that instant, the darkness shuddered, and a new determination surged through her veins. Could she find Max among the horrors surrounding her? The shadows hung thick in anticipation. The light flickered again, revealing a haunting choice she never saw coming. Would she fight, or would she fall? Sarah plunged deeper into the darkness, each heartbeat echoing like a countdown. The warmth from the fingers that pulled her down vanished, leaving her craving both light and escape. She fought back against the enveloping despair, struggling to stand. Panic clawed at her insides, the urgency to find Max pressing against her like an unending weight. "Mommy," the whisper echoed in her mind, bouncing off the walls of her fear. "Help me." It drifted across the shadows and felt so close, and yet so far. She strained against the grip of the gloom, the air thickening around her like molasses. A flicker ahead, there it was again, a glimmering beacon, teasing her hopes as it danced away. She lunged toward it, willing her feet to move faster, but the shadows tightened their grip. They coiled around her legs, rough and cold like steel cables, dragging her back with every step. Their whispers grew louder, a cacophony filled with taunts, laughter echoing in her ears. "You can't save him, Sarah. You belong to us. Shut up," she cried, the sound of her own voice feeling alien yet desperate. With every ounce of strength, she bit back her agony. Forcing her way past the shadows that stabbed at her skin like icy needles, she struggled towards the light. The shapes began to shift around her. No longer in the meadow, she was now in what seemed like a twisted reflection of her home. The living room, once filled with laughter and joy, was now a sinister carnival of horrors. Toys lay scattered across the floor, Max's toys mangled and broken, lifeless like the hollow screams echoing within her heart. "Mommy!" Somehow the voice had transformed, now drenched in a sorrow all too familiar. "Max!" Her heart raced as she turned. It felt like a mirage, a cruel illusion meant to sway her resolve. There, in the far corner, stood a figure, small, sad, shrouded in gloom. Fear washed over her as she approached. Each step felt like a betrayal, her hope wrestling with despair. "Max, is that you?" She spoke gently, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. She reached for the figure. Its shape shuddered. "Help me, Mommy!" The plea sliced through her soul. But before she could touch him, he flickered out like a candle extinguished in the wind, and the room dissolved, sinking back into the void. "No!" she screamed, her body trembling with the shock of loss that seared through her. The shadows erupted around her, eager to engulf her entire being. Suddenly, a flicker of memory surfaced, a moment shared with Max. His laughter, pure and untainted, filled her heart, giving her strength. "I won't stop looking for you, Max," she yelled defiantly, her voice rising above the darkness. The shadows reacted, recoiling as if struck. She pressed on, drawing nearer to that dim glow standing firm against the tide. "I'm coming." She pushed through, ripping apart the waves of despair, determination clawing forth. But as she approached, the whispers grew frantic. "You have to choose. It's too late." They howled, shrieking promises of eternal peace, of giving in to the darkness. And there it was, the dim glow carved itself into a distinguishable form, a doorway yawning before her, beckoning her inside. She could feel Max's presence on the other side, a gentle tug guiding her forward. But the shadows were relentless, crashing against her like waves. The light flickered, faltering as the darkness tried to swallow it whole. Sarah's heart raced in tandem with her footsteps, each choice spiraling into the depths of terror and hope. "Mommy," the voice broke through again, more desperate, louder, filled with fear. Max needed her. Would she embrace the light, even if it meant sacrificing herself to the abyss? Taking a deep breath, Sarah gripped the edges of the doorway, feeling the warmth radiate against her clammy skin. Her future, her fate, hung delicately in the balance. Could she find the courage to step through? And what awaited her on the other side? She crushed the creeping dread, heart racing as she prepared to leap into the unknown. But the shadows roared, a final plea echoing in her ears. "You will wish you stayed." In that heartbeat, everything stood still. The light began to fade, but somewhere, buried beneath the shadows, she felt Max calling for her. Just ahead, the doorway pulsed with energy. Would she dare to embrace it, or would she be lost forever? Sarah stepped forward, nearly losing herself in the swirling darkness. The threshold before her felt like an electric pulse, an invitation wrapped in dread. She hesitated, the whisper of the void clawing at her back, promising sweet release if she would only surrender. "Mommy," called Max again, his voice now a frantic plea, raw and filled with fear. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to focus on his voice. The sound was like a thread weaving through the chaos, pulling her toward that light. With a sudden surge of ferocity, she hurled herself into the doorway. The world reshaped itself around her. For one terrifying moment, there was nothing but silence and an oppressive weight pressing down. Then light exploded in a blinding torrent, washing over her like icy water. As her vision cleared, she found herself in a strange version of her home, one steeped in an unsettling stillness. The walls, painted in soft hues just moments ago, now pulsed with a sinister, sickly stain. Furniture lay overturned, the sofa's fabric frayed and worn, as if it had been violently clawed at. Shadows danced along the edges, writhing and twisting, as if they were alive and breathing with a creepiness all their own. "Max?" Sarah's voice trembled in the suffocating quiet. There was no answer, only the hum of a distorted silence. Then, a soft cry echoed from the other room. It sounded so close and yet impossibly distant, a heart-wrenching whimper that sent ice through her veins. She bolted toward the sound, her feet flying across the dark floor, adrenaline coursing through her like fire in the kitchen. She froze. The sight before her twisted her stomach into knots. The table was set like a grotesque feast, plates with food that looked rotten and slimy laid out like an offering to a malevolent spirit. Flies buzzed about, darkening the air. And in the center, a single toy, a small, weathered action figure of Max, eyes wide and terrified, sat as if waiting for her. "Mommy, help!" Max's voice floated from the attic. A desperate cry echoed with fear and hopelessness. The chill of dread settled deep in her bones, paralyzing her for a split second. But she wouldn't falter again. Not now. Not when he needed her most. Rushing toward the staircase, Sarah's heart thundered. Each step creaked ominously as if warning her to turn back. Agonizing shadows swirled around her, slithering up her legs, whispering her deepest fears and regrets. "He's not real," they hissed. "You can't save him. You're too late, shut up." Sarah screamed, her voice ricocheting off the walls. She pressed her hands to her ears, drowning out the deceitful sounds that dripped with malice. Still, doubt gnawed at her, unveiling memories of times she had let Max down. Arriving at the attic door, she hesitated. Heavy silence pooled around her, a palpable entity that draped her in a chilling embrace. The air was thick, suffocating. She could feel Max's presence behind that door, but also something else, a suffocating dread, as if the shadows themselves conspired against her. "Max!" she yelled again, slamming her hand onto the warped door. "I'm coming." With a deep breath, she flung it open. The sight within made her stomach clench. It was dark, darker than she had known. The only light came from a flickering bulb, which cast erratic shadows against the pale walls. And there he was, a small figure curled up in the corner, trembling against the cold wood. "Mommy!" Max cried, eyes wide, shimmering with tears. But as she stepped closer, every ounce of warmth and safety evaporated. Max's form flickered, trembling like a wisp of ghostly smoke. "Help me please," panic clawed at her chest. Was he real, or just another careful trick of the darkness? It was as if destinies danced before her, and with every heartbeat, she felt herself slipping. The shadows tightened their grip, swirling messily around her legs, eager to drag her down into their haunting grip. Behind her, the doorway trembled. "We can give you what you desire," they cooed. "Just let go. Join us, Max. Please. I want to let you go." She reached out, fighting the instinct to flee. In that moment, with trembling hands, Sarah prepared to make a choice. She could feel the pulse of something vile rising in the air, and with it came a horrifying question. If she reached for Max, what would she lose in return? As she stepped forward, the shadows moaned. Whatever awaited her was growing restless. Was Max worth the ultimate price? And just as she was about to grasp his hand, the attic door slammed shut behind her, darkness swallowing her whole. The suffocating darkness enveloped Sarah, the shadows swirling like a tempest around her, menacing whispers clawing at her resolve. For an unbearable moment, fear paralyzed her. Max's features flickered like a candle in a gale, wavering in and out of her reality. "Mommy, please." His voice echoed eerily, a siren's call weaving through the oppressive dark. "Max, I'm here. I want to let go." Tears mingled with the dread surging in her chest. She stepped forward, heart pounding, ready to grasp her son, even if it meant confronting the void itself. But the shadows curled and writhed at her feet, hissing promises of eternal peace if she would only surrender. She felt their icy breath against her skin, taunting and alluring. Surrender meant ceasing the fight, yet it also meant losing every precious part of her, the joy she carried for her children, her laughter, her life. "Sarah," the darkness groaned, almost tenderly. "Join us. You're tired. You fought long enough. It was wrong. So chillingly wrong." She couldn't let the void win. Not when Max needed her. Clenching her fists, Sarah bellowed into the darkness. "I want to become a part of you. I refuse." Each word was fueled by the fire of love she held for Max, igniting her spirit against the cold despair that surrounded her. With desperate resolve, she lunged forward, willing herself to find her son. "Max, I'm right here." The shadows writhed violently around her as she forged ahead, and just as she reached the trembling form of her son, the darkness screamed, a cacophony of rage threatening to tear her apart. But she didn't hesitate. She flung her arms around Max, anchoring her heart in the warmth of his small body. "I've got you. I want to let you go." In that fierce embrace, something remarkable happened. The shadows screamed in agony, recoiling as if burned by the light of their love. A warmth radiated from them, pushing the encroaching darkness away, illuminating the attic with a soft, ethereal glow. It was the purest love, a surge of hope against the darkness, purging away the despair that sought to claim them. "Stay with me, Max," Sarah pleaded, feeling the shadows shatter against the power of their bond. Max's presence grew more defined, solidifying before her, no longer just an illusion but her true son. "I was scared, Mommy," he whispered, tears shimmering in his eyes. "Me too, but we're stronger together. We have to fight." She took his hand, squeezing it tightly as they faced the shadows. The light flickered like a heartbeat, fueled by their fearlessness in the face of the encroaching void. "Let us go home," Sarah shouted, turning toward the shuddering door that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heart. Together they moved forward, stepping closer to the light which now bathed the room in a protective glow. As they barreled toward the door, the shadows clamored and shrieked, trying to reclaim the ground they lost. Stay. You belong to us. But their voices became weaker, the shadows thinner, as Sarah and Max approached the shimmering threshold. With one final glance back at the darkness that sought to claim them, Sarah whispered, "You'll never win." And with that, she and Max rushed through the door, bursting into blinding radiance. Suddenly, they were standing back in her familiar living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, filling the space with warmth and normalcy. The air felt lighter, the atmosphere dispelling the past horrors. "Mommy?" Max looked up, confusion and relief mingling in his eyes. Sarah knelt to embrace him, laughter bubbling up uncontrollably as she held her son tightly. "Oh, thank goodness! We're safe." They lingered in their embrace, both absorbing the warmth of shared love that pure light provided. The shadows had been cast away. As they stood there, an understanding infused the room. They were free, liberated from the grip of darkness, and as they cautiously stepped outside, hand in hand, the tranquil charm of Maplewood welcomed them back, vibrant and serene. The sun bathed them in its golden hue, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Sarah could breathe deeply, feeling hope spreading within. "Let us make new memories. Okay?" she suggested with a playful smile. "Yes." With no shadows, Max beamed back, his laughter a joyous melody that filled her heart. The world felt alive again, full of promise and laughter. Together, they walked towards the bright future, leaving behind the shadows where they belonged, knowing they were stronger than any darkness they ever faced. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more incredible stories. Don't miss a moment of our exclusive content that will keep you at the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this nail-biting conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this story. Your support matters, and only true fans understand the importance of these actions.